Hey everybody, and welcome back to Fed News for February 6th, your fake figure wrestling news. Let's get started. So currently in wrestling news, the roster sizes have been revealed. For the WWE, it will be 40 men. For AEW, it will be 30. For NXT, it will be 20. IWGP is also 20. UWF gets 20. Ring of Honor gets 20. TNA, AAA, NWA, WWC can get basically anything, as there's not 20 people enough to start an actual full-on roster. So they just kind of have whatever's left over. In talks right now currently are Paul Burchill, Steven Richards, and Kenzo Suzuki to come join the WWE. Obviously not as active members, but on the standby, if you will. So match results for the week. From Rising Up, you had Simon System, which is Jake, Jesse, and Simon Dean defeat Gangrel and the Singh Brothers by pinfall. Rico and Haas would defeat Jason Jordan and Steve Blackman by pinfall. And in the main event, saw Val Venus in a rematch defeat George Steele by pinfall this time, instead of losing, unlike last time, to count out. The main show would see David Otunga debut and defeat Ricky Steamboat by pinfall. Batista would come out and want revenge on Piper for costing him last week. Piper tells him to find 3 partners to face Triple H, Psycho Sid, and the debuting Sean O'Haire. The Brainbusters would then come out and defeat the Nasty Boys by pinfall after a heated tag team match. Macho Man and Bret Hart did come out backstage to talk to Batista and tell him they would team up with him. And Bret knows a guy who might want to get at Sid. So stay tuned. Obviously, EC3 would defeat Great Muta by pinfall in his debut on the main show. Demolition Axe and Smash would defeat Junkyard Dog and Iron Sheik after losing last week to regain a win. Batista's mystery partner would enter last for the main event, and it would be Goldberg. And in the main event, would see Triple H, Sean O'Haire, Psycho Sid, and Roddy Piper defeat Batista, Bret Hart, Randy Savage, and Goldberg by pinfall. This came after Triple H low blow Batista, allowing Sean O'Haire to hit the Widowmaker, where Triple H would then make the cover. Match results for AEW this week, though, was not a pay-per-view. Instead, it was Sammy Guevara debuting to defeat Pac by pinfall. Wardlow would defeat Dustin Rhodes by pinfall. Samoa Joe would defeat Darby Allin by submission, getting a win after losing the world title opportunity he had last week. MJF defeats Miro, non-title, by submission. And in the main event, would see CM Punk defeat Jon Moxley by pinfall. This came about after Moxley made comments on Twitter about how he was upset he was not in the main event the previous week. Over on Dark, however, though, there was Powerhouse Hobbs debuting, defeating Wheeler Yuta. Adam Page defeats Brody Lee. The main event would see Jurassic Express defeats Trent and Chuck Taylor. Over to IWGP now this week as Jerry Lynn defeats Ethan Page by pinfall. Mike Knox and Scotty Riggs teamed up to defeat Tony Mamaluke and Vito by pinfall. Bill DeMott continues his winning ways by defeating Steve Corino by pinfall. The main event would see Luther Reigns defeat Chris Harris by pinfall. Over to NXT now as MSK defeats Alpha Academy by pinfall. Braun Breaker would debut and defeat Ricochet by pinfall. And the main event saw Braun Strowman defeat Bronson Reed by pinfall. Over to Impact now as Umaga would defeat Angel Garza by pinfall. The Dudleys defeated Santino Marella and No Way Jose by pinfall. And the main event would see Chavo Guerrero versus Cassius Ohno end in a draw after Ezekiel Jackson attacked both participants to end the show. Over to Ring of Honor now, the AEW version, as the Dark Order defeats Private Party. Lance Archer defeats Ultimo Dragon. The main event see Bryan Danielson defeat Andrade by submission. The UWF held its first show. It's one of monthly shows as the Italian Stallion and George South, defeats the Fantastics by pinfall. Dr. Death Steve Williams debuted and defeats Pez Whatley by pinfall. The main event would see Dr. David Schultz defeat Dick Murdoch by submission. No show for TNA this week. However, NWA held its show as the Mountie defeated Tony Atlas by submission in a Boston Crab. Bash and Booger would defeat Coco Beware by pinfall. Lanny Poffo defeats Draws by countout. And The Sheik defeats Mr. Fuji by pinfall. Over to OROH, as Rocky Romero and Michael Elgin ended a time limit draw of only 10 minutes. Joey Janela would defeat Sami Callihan by pinfall. Bull James defeats Juice Robinson by pinfall. The main event would see Colt Cabana defeat PCO by pinfall. Nothing on AAA this week, nor the WWC, or GCW for that matter. That is all for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed. Check back again next week for February 13th edition of Fed News.